Yeah. Listen me. Listen me, feature. Spread the one that take the paper across the region. Listen me, feature. Listen me. Listen me news would like to introduce you to this brand new concept. One health, one Caribbean, one love. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health are the brand new concept to fight virus and diseases. Calling all of the various doctors. Let's work together to achieve this. Human doctor, animal doctor, the environmental doctor. Each one an important factor. The public health have a brand new chapter. A good example a chickpea. Even if it don't hurt you, then it still hurt me. If you check the process, you will see it move from the environment to animal into we. First from the egg in the water, then from the water to the mosquito, then from the mosquito it goes straight to the people. But if we work together, then it lead to one health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health is not just for people with medical occupation. It is for the entire population. So we need everyone cooperation across the region. Improve food security, better solid waste management and water purity. Protect the habitat for you and me, for the animals on the land and the fish in the sea. One Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. Enough respect to one health leaders. 12 countries across the region. To a help the Caribbean, them are leaders. Let me list out the island: Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Belize, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Barbados, Dominica, Trinidad, Tobago, Haiti and Antigua. One Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong. One health, one Caribbean, one love. Together we're strong.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this year's evening symposium. Our theme is One Health, One Welfare. I know some of you joined us yesterday for Research Day and the very exciting 3MT competitions. And today we're going to have some further discussions as well on the topic of One Health, One Welfare. At this time, I'd like to welcome our Master of Ceremonies, Catherine Crozier.
Hello everyone, thank you for attending Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine Evening Symposium for this One Health Week. As she already mentioned, I am Catherine Crozier, a current second semester student who will be the Master of Ceremonies for this evening. We're going to start with a short recording of an interview that myself, Dr. Peterson, and Dr. Claxton conducted with Dr. Temple Grandin a few weeks ago. The clip that we'll be playing this evening will be Dr. Peterson's questions. These are the questions that he asked her throughout the interview, and I'm going to go ahead and play that clip. And if anyone has any questions after, you're welcome to ask those to myself, or Dr. Peterson, who's in attendance tonight, can answer those for you as well.
My name is Eric Peterson. I'm an associate professor in the Clinical Sciences Department here at Rush University School of Veterinary Medicine. And a big fan of yours, Dr. Grandin. I actually met you many years ago, probably, I believe, if my memory serves correctly, it was an AAEP meeting. I can't remember the city for the life of me, but we got on an elevator together. And so I've known your work for quite some time. But I would also like to say that probably more importantly, I'm a very proud parent of an amazing daughter who has benefited significantly from Dr. Claxton and the resources here at the St. Kitts Spectrum Center. So I'll go ahead and kind of get into our initial questions here, and then we'll move on to Catherine and Dr. Claxton.
Okay.
So these are questions that some are mine, and some, as Ruth had said, were received from students on campus here at Ross, and things that they had interest, or we have interest in, and asking you from your vast experience in the industry. So, what are your current kind of goals or hopes for the humane handling of livestock in the industry at the moment?
Well, in the U.S., handling is greatly improved. You know, in Australia, a lot of other countries, handling is improved. People are recognizing the value of low-stress handling of cattle. And I've written a lot about this. I have free information on my website, grandin.com. I've got many books I've written on this. And we still need to keep teaching people the importance of low-stress handling. Animals that are calm around people and are willing to approach people will be more productive animals. The cows will give more milk. The beef cattle will produce more meat. Also, you'll have better quality meat at the slaughterhouse if the animals calmly walk into the slaughterhouse. Now, one of the complaints that I hear about low-stress handling, it takes too much time. Well, it does take time to learn it. There's going to be a phase in learning it where it's going to be slower. But after you've learned it, it's about probably less time. Another big advantage also for people is the veterinarians and other people are less likely to get injured during handling of cattle. So there's lots of good reasons to implement low-stress handling. I have lots of free videos on grandin.com. There's lots of information available. In fact, I have a new book that came out, the Grandin Papers, which is my most important journal articles starting from 1980 all the way into the present with some book chapters. Low-stress handling methods are really important. Let's just review some of them. No yelling. If you yell at animals, they're going to get stressed because it has intent. They know you are angry. Don't hit animals. Also, you need to learn basic principles of flight zone and point of balance. And I recommend watching the videos to learn that. And you learn some of these things, handling is going to be just so much easier. Well, part of the thing on good handling is we have to change the attitude of getting the animal to cooperate rather than just forcing it. It's really important that an animal's first experience with something new, like the corral system, be a good first experience. Maybe feed them in the corrals. Or even with pets, they're doing a practice called Fear Free today, where the puppy's first experience is getting treats at the veterinary clinic. The animal's first experience with going on a trailer, for example, your horse, should be a good first experience. Handling is gradually getting better. but a lot of it's changing attitudes. Another thing I have found is the manager of the ranch, the meat packing plant, the management has to get behind and endorse good handling and low stress handling methods. It's really important.
Thank you. So are there any specific areas that you think still kind of stand out that need attention in these situations?
Well, handling is improved, but one of the things I'm concerned about is we're breeding both dairy cows and beef cattle to be more and more productive, and we're getting increased problems with lameness. And I think some of this is genetics. And to have low stress handling, I have to have animals that can walk. And if animals have difficulty walking, it will be very difficult to handle them in a really good low stress manner. But we're getting more problems on there's certain Angus cattle right now that are dropping dead from heart failure. And I think it's because we're breeding too much for meat. We have to be careful what we breed for. Let's look at the dairy cow, for example. She's been bred to get more and more and more milk. Now it's very difficult to get the dairy cow to breed back. I was absolutely shocked at how bad the first service conception rates were. The average in the U.S. side, my student dug up some figures with 40%. That's completely terrible. I like to look at genetics sort of like a national budget. If I put all of my emphasis into the economy, meat, milk, and eggs, I may take away from the infrastructure, skeleton, bone, heart, lungs, reproduction. And maybe we're also taking away from the military, which would be the immune system. We have to look at what is the optimal production, not maximum. Yes, we need to have productive animals because we can have more milk with less dairy cattle. That is a good thing. But if you take it too far, you can really get into trouble. And I can see this being a problem in the future. If somebody had said to me 10 years ago, we would have lame beef cattle, feedlot cattle showing up at a meat plant, I wouldn't have believed them. But it's happening now, and that kind of answers the question about, do you think this work that still has to be done in the dairy and beef industry? Yes, I'm very concerned about what animals we're breeding right now and saw the problems that they have.
Yeah, I've always thought that too, and as humans, we've done it regardless of the species that we talk about. We see it in, obviously, the beef and dairy cattle. We see it in racehorses. We see it in many of the purebred dog breeds.
Oh, dog
we
is terrible.
select for an individual trait, which means we're ignoring a whole bunch of other traits, and it becomes very problematic.
Well, we're breeding brachycephalic dogs that can't breathe.
Yes.
I have a problem, big problem, with breeding animals that do not function. They need to be able to breathe, walk, and have their babies naturally. And we have some bulldogs that cannot do that. That's really wrong. Now, if you just make the nose a little less flat, I saw a very nice pug where he was bred a little less extreme, and he was totally functional. He was good. So it's just reducing it a little bit, and you'll be okay.
I couldn't agree more. That's fantastic. So my next question is around the idea or the mentality of that's the way we've always done it. And I feel like, in all your work, maybe that was something that you definitely had to kind of fight for. How were you able to convince people that against that mentality of, well, this is the way we've always handled the cattle, or regardless of the species? How do you convince them, just because we've always done it that way, that's not necessarily the best?
You do it one cattle producer at a time. And this gets into implementing new things. You need to find an early adopter that wants to make something new work. Okay, right now there's a lot of stuff with artificial intelligence, virtual fencing. Virtual fencing, I think, could really do some good for really good rotational grazing, which I'm a very big promoter of rotational grazing. But you have to have an early adopter that wants to make something new work, whether it's new, better handling or virtual fencing. And then, because if you get somebody who does not believe in the new thing, they will make it fail. And then when you have an early adopter that makes it work, then you write about it. I wrote a lot of articles in cattle magazines on just how to handle animals, how to design corrals, just really basic how-to articles. You do it one meat plant at a time, one ranch at a time. If it's working with fear-free with pets, one pet practice at a time, and write about how you did it. But the first step is top management has to be totally in favor of the new thing, regardless of what it is.
That makes complete sense, and then hopefully word of mouth carries its way through as well.
And it's very important with something really new that your first early adopters are successful. You need to pick the right people to implement something new.
So it's not, it can't be forced. It has to,
No.
it has to
No.
be, that completely makes sense. I can appreciate that.
Especially something completely new, like virtual fencing, for example. Because first of all, on virtual fencing, you have to train your cattle to it. You don't just buy phone apps and move cattle around. That's on some web pages that needs to go away. I think virtual fencing has got great potential, but you have to take the time to train the cattle to it. It's going to take time to learn how to use it properly. And I'm a big proponent of that technology, because the other thing is, cattle's getting attacked more and more of being bad for the environment. And I've been doing a lot of research on grazing, and good grazing practices improve the land. I have a paper your students might like. It's called Grazing Cattle, Sheep, and Goats is an important part of a sustainable agricultural future. And grazing is one of the places where the ruminant animals can really have a future, and when they're grazed correctly, they improve the land. You graze them wrong, they wreck land. But you do them right, they improve the land.
Thank you for that. I would love to, I'm familiar with the paper you referenced, and we would definitely be happy to share that with our students. We would definitely be happy to share that with. Our next question that I would have that came from one of our students is if you have any recommendations for better animal welfare in areas that are underserved, so that cattlemen that don't necessarily have the resources of equipment or even just the information around animal welfare. Do you have an idea of how to kind of share that information, or kind of use your ideas maybe on a lower budget, if you will?
Well, stop screaming at cattle. That costs nothing to implement. Don't hit them with sticks. Let's just start with basics. And then other welfare things like lameness. Are your animals clean, or are they living in a mud hole? Let's just work with basics. Let's start with dairy. And in dairy, one of the top welfare concerns is lameness. And there are good scoring tools available for measuring lameness. The cow's getting too skinny. The cow's getting big swollen joints from laying on concrete. I can measure swollen joints. Another important thing is keeping calves clean. That's really important. I can measure that. Let's just start with basics. I have another paper. It's called Practical Applications of the 5 Domains Framework, Animal Welfare Framework for Supply Chain Managers. I do a lot of work on training McDonald's, Costco, and other companies on evaluating animal welfare. And we need to start with simple metrics. For example, in dairy, lameness, swollen joints, dirty, too skinny, keeping calves clean. Just very, very basic things like this, and you will have more productive dairy cows. Also, quiet, gentle handling. Let's just start with very easy to implement basics. And there are lots of free scoring tools online for measuring lameness, for measuring swollen joints, pictorial scoring for measuring how dirty animals are. Some of those are in the animal welfare quality, and they're on other web pages. My web page has a lot of information. It's just grandin.com. I just want to start really simple basics.
That of course makes complete sense. Like most things in life, if we go back to the basics and start from there, that gets you most of the way to your goal. So thank you for that.
And the thing is, one thing that's not valued enough is the importance of really good stockmanship. And if I go into a dairy and the dairy cows come up to me, that's a really good sign. If the dairy cows run away when I go into the pens, they may have been treated harshly, or they may not have received enough attention from the dairy producer. And a good stock person is a skilled job, and it often doesn't get enough credit.
I couldn't agree with that more as well. That is so very true. And with the kind of negative implications into our production animal businesses that are floating around the internet these days, I see that there are some really good producers out there that kind of have started fighting back, if you will, with videos and TikTok series on, look here, I'm here with my cows. I know my cows. They come to me. So I think they're doing some really, really great work for the industry.
I've also seen some very great work with grazing, and they just lead the cattle from one pasture to another. And I've been in the cattle industry for 50 years. And I see people bashing cattle. That's one of the reasons why I wrote that paper on grazing. And what people forget is 20% of the world's land can only be used for grazing. There's not enough water for crops. There's not enough water in the ground, and there's not enough water in the form of rain. And we need to grow food on that land. The other thing we need to be doing with crops is rotating corn and soy crops, and then grazing cattle on a cover crop every third year. Or you can graze sheep, or let's say graze ruminants, let's put it that way.
Sure.
And you can improve the soil health doing this. The grazing is something where there's a real win-win situation.
I would also like to reiterate everyone's thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it. I think we had some very nice conversations, and we really do appreciate you, and for your time, but also all the things that you have contributed to animal welfare as well as the autism community. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I guess I'll sign off now.
Okay, that concludes the interview portion. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Peterson regarding the interview? Okay, wonderful. We'll move on to our discussion on the 4 R's: rescue, rehabilitation, release, and research. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Dean Callanan.
Okay, everybody. So what we're going to do is I'll introduce this, but while I'm introducing it, there's a number of people who know that they should be here on stage. So if they could all join us, it might be helpful. And if you stick to your groups, do not stand outside your group. No, I'm only messing. Okay, so welcome to this evening's symposium. And following on from the wonderful work that Temple Grandin talked about there and the interviews that happened yesterday and today, we want to move further along in this whole concept of One Health, One Welfare. And, very much alluded to in Dr. Grandin's background and the work that she's doing, it touches both animal and human welfare and also has a significant effect on the world that we live in. So that kind of brings together the whole concept of One Health. And this is the same thing we're going to do here today. So we have a number of people here. Many of them represent you many of your clubs. I don't know if you want to come over here, if you're happy over there, but if you're fine, we'll leave you be. But many of the people up here represent you in many of the clubs. And what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about the clubs, introduce some of the faculty advisors, and just kind of maybe hopefully give you a sense of when you dig deeper into what's going on here, it is a One Health activity. In other words, there is environmental related issues where it's important to look at the 4 Rs. In other words, rescue, rehabilitation, release, and research. There's also a human element to this, both positive and potentially negative. And there is also the animal itself and the welfare concerns that happen. And so I think that's where we're trying to come from. Everyone be relaxed. I have no idea what questions I'm going to ask you. No, I do. Don't worry about this. So what we're going to do is we'll pass the microphone around, and I think, Andrew, you've got it. And the first group we will talk with is the Shelter Medicine and VIDA Club. And for anyone who's doing pub quizzes or bar quizzes in the future, go and Google what VIDA stands for. I'm not going to tell you now, but it's not for what you think it stands for. The words are very important, so think of that in your next pub quiz. But what we're going to start with is just maybe a little overall concept of what you do. And please also introduce yourselves, because not everyone's going to know who's who and what. But I'll start with the VIDA and Shelter Medicine group. And we have both Kelsey and Julie, so fire ahead.
Hello. Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Kelsey. I'm the president of Shelter Med. So Shelter Med at Ross is a 501c3. What that means is that we respond to calls from the local community and from students. We go out and we assess those animals, and from there we kind of take it on and see what we can do to help them the best that we can. One of those options is to come into our program so we can intake them into our foster program, which is solely foster based. We don't have a facility, and we have around 30 to 40 animals at a time in this program. From there we do adoptions. We run a whole adoption program. And then we also do outreaches. So we have our big community outreach this weekend where we'll have like 12 doctors, 50 plus students volunteering, and we're able to vaccinate around 200 animals, get them tested for heartworm, treat them for Ehrlichia, tick-borne diseases, that kind of thing. And a big thing that we do there is try to harp on education, get them on the 7th spay list, that kind of thing. And we also are able to give them free dog food, leashes, collars, things like that that are really needed in the community. So yeah, that's basically what Shelter Med does.
Wonderful. And Julie, you're part of that too?
I'm the president of VIDA, actually.
Okay.
So I'm the president of VIDA. So VIDA's mission is essentially to provide access to veterinary care for local animals here on St. Kitts. And we do this, and it's either free of charge or at a heavily subsidized cost. And it's primarily the veterinary students here at Ross that are doing the medical care. So we do this through 3 events. We have an event called Clinic Day where students go with local doctor, Dr. Pike, on his mobile veterinary service and attend to whatever cases he called on to work for that day. That's completely free of charge. And then we collaborate with Shelter Med as well. So we're also involved in Community Day, which Kelsey just explained. And then lastly, we have our what we call spay days, which they occur usually 3 times a semester, and they're full day surgery events where it's again like a heavily subsidized cost spays and neuters, and it's actually Ross students in upper semesters who are able to do the spays and neuters under the guidance of DBMs.
Okay.
And then, sorry, I forgot one thing. We also have a growing fund that is called the Angel Fund, and we add money to this every semester. And this is essentially just a sum of money that if a local animal is in need of some kind of medical care that the owners are not financially able to pay for, then we can cover between half or up to the full cost of whatever treatment that they're in need of.
So while you still have the microphone, just a question for you. So, so this is like in the concept of One Health. So the kind of work that you've been doing with VIDA, how have you seen it impact the community? How have you seen it impact the welfare of animals? And how have you seen it make people feel good or bad about the process?
That's a good question. So I guess in terms of feeling good or bad about the process, what I would probably touch on for that would be the spaying and neutering of animals, because we do get a little bit of pushback from the community on that sometimes. A lot of people have a lot of, I would say, maybe misconceptions or different cultural understandings of like what it means to spay and neuter an animal and what it does to them. So for example, I know a couple spay days ago, a female owner of a dog, a male intact dog, dropped off her dog, and then her partner, who was a male, picked up the dog, and he wasn't aware of what the dog had initially been dropped off for. And so he saw the dog, and the dog was still a little bit sedate, and he was really worried and concerned about the dog, and he was like, oh, why did you do this? Look how ashamed he is. Look how upset he is. He's crossing his legs. He's so embarrassed. You took away his manhood. And the owner was basically explaining the aspects of his dog that he loved so much, was that the dog was such a ladies' man and was so macho. And so he was initially quite upset, and validly so, because based on his perception, we were taking away a fundamental aspect of like what he loved and cared for in his dog. But we were able to kind of address this by assuring him, first of all, that it's unlikely that the dog was going to be substantially different after. I mean, the dog was a few years old, so it was likely that, the behaviors that he loved so much in the dog were probably already set in stone. He was still able to lift his leg to pee, for sure. And then we also touched on the benefits of neutering a male dog, specifically decrease in testicular cancers, less roaming, so less risk of being hit by a car, etc.
Okay, thank you. I want to remind everybody we have a roving mic, and Brittany is going to be roving with the mic, isn't that correct? Nod your head. Yep. So if anyone wants to ask questions at any time, please do. And, plenty of opportunities to grill these people. You may never get to grill them again. But that's wonderful. Back to you, Kelsey. So, what would you say have been, kind of the emotional challenges that you would have in this area of work that you're doing, and how do you probably equip yourself, or how should people equip themselves for that?
Yeah. I debated how I was going to answer this question for a while, because if I'm being honest, it's hard. It's a lot of work, and it does take an emotional toll if you're not willing to kind of face that head on. So I always say, like, celebrate the highs, celebrate the wins, and I think you need to feel that and acknowledge what you're doing overall. And I think the same is true for the losses, where, you have to feel what you feel. You have to be upset about it. You have to let yourself be upset about it, that kind of thing. But my big thing is kind of leave it. And like when you wake up the next morning, it's a new day. There's more lives that need to be saved. I don't normally dive into numbers, but we, and I'm going to give this away for my SABMA meeting, but I did go and look just like on our Facebook Messenger just to see like how many calls do we can we not attend to? How many dogs and cats do we have to say no to? And there's been 37 already this semester. So it's a lot. It's a lot to say no to and know that they're not going to get the help that they might need. But in return, you have to look at the numbers that you are saving. And that's why I think it's important to have that data so you can look back at the end of the month, at the end of the semester, and be like, wow, look how many lives we did change, basically.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for these guys before we will move on to, and we will flip back around, don't worry, you're not getting away this easy tonight. We will flip back around and ask some more questions as well. So thank you. Again, thanks for the work that both of you are doing and your teams that are doing. It's important work. And we're going to move on to, and I haven't left out Dr. Andrew Peter yet, because we're going to move on to a second group, and that's the FCP group, and Alison is involved there, so she's not getting off the hook, isn't that correct? And Dr. Pita is the faculty advisor for both of these groups, and Dr. Andrew Pita is assistant professor of shelter medicine and small animal surgery, and has actually a significant background in shelter medicine and has been further credentialed in that area through the University of Florida and has a lot of involvement in these activities for many years. I won't say how many years, but many years. But Alison, can you give us just an update on FCP and, you know, for the uninitiated like myself, maybe how it differs from the other groups, the other clubs as well?
Yes, of course. So for those who don't know me, I am Allison. I am the trapping coordinator for FCP, which stands for the Feral Cat Project. So we are different than ShelterMed and VITA in the fact that we solely work with the feral cat population of St. Kitts. So we actively work through a trap, neuter, release program where we go out at least 4 times a semester. We go trapping in different neighborhoods in St. Kitts where we know feral cats are going to be common. We trap and then we average about 20 to 24 cats per spay day, which is amazing. We're able to help and treat any additional discrepancies that these cats need. They're able to get the attention that they need, and then of course we release them back into the same location where we find them. That way we can monitor and see exactly their impact on the ecosystem. But we're also educating a lot of locals to where proper feline management, how to manage these colonies, and I keep close contact with them as well in terms of monitoring numbers.
So this is a very fertile species on the island, so you'll never run out of business. But how do you monitor your effects? Like how do you? Well, there's many reasons, obviously, to neuter an animal. And it's not just about reducing the numbers, but how are you monitoring what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I work really closely with a lot of different community members, especially students. They're reaching out to me constantly about different cats that are showing up to their doorstep or established colonies that are at different apartment complexes throughout the island. I work really closely to try and at least monitor and see if we're kind of decreasing the population or the goal is to maintain a certain number of cats. Of course, we do have instances where others tend to join other colonies, so we try to keep track of that. But I do work really closely with a lot of locals, and I've made countless friends and educating them on proper treatment of these cats, and that way we can at least make a solid impact on the population on the island.
Yeah, and I think we win as educators, and Ross wins, and the students win by being involved in all of these clubs. And one way we win is obviously in the practical experience we gain from trapping and neutering, but also in research. So can you just tell me a little bit about, the involvement of FCP in research and how you feel it's been going, and maybe any of the highlights and challenges you might have had?
So there is an exciting new project by Dr. Hooper. She is looking specifically at the feral cat population and working really closely with us in the club so that we can actually get substantial impact and see what FCP has done over the years and see if we need to adjust or do something differently. So she's actually bringing out cameras to monitor colonies before and after when we trap, just to see how dynamics work, cat behavior, see how exactly they're impacting that ecosystem in that area. So it is a very brand new project. She's starting it out this semester, so I am really excited to see her data and see exactly how positively we have impacted and see the results of all of our work.
Wonderful. Any questions yet? I could. Oh, great. There's a few questions up here. I was going to say we will put it in next week's tests if you want us to.
So I'm a first semester student, and I've been told multiple times not to take an animal. It probably is owned, just walking around on its own. How do you know the animals that you trap are not owned by somebody?
That is a very good question. Sometimes it can be a bit of a gray area. For the most part, I do like to canvass the area and at least talk to either students that live in that area or locals and kind of see who actually is someone owning this animal? Is this an outdoor cat, or are they just simply feeding them because they're there? So kind of it's gauged off of each scenario. Sometimes we do get a little pushback on locals where they don't want us to go trapping, and I will completely respect their decisions. I might educate them a little bit more, kind of spread what our awareness is for, but I try not to get any owned cats, and if they are owned, I do educate them about our 7th semester list, so that they can still get the proper care that they need.
To add to that, they also put signage in the neighborhoods. There's certain, on the lampposts and different areas around the neighborhood, they put signage indicating that the Feral Cat Project is coming from Ross. They will be trapping, just to give forewarning so that if there are owned animals that people will know. And also each cat that gets trapped and brought into the program, to go through the whole process, they're all microchip scanned, also to ensure that, you know, there's not some owned cat. And we have had instances where we have found that we have gotten an owned cat and then we've been able to rectify the situation.
Great, thank you. Another question?
Yeah, I have a question. Other than the occasional intramural or extramural projects that collaborate with FCP, are the cats being screened for any pathogens?
So there are a couple of research projects being conducted during our spay days. I believe there are at least 2 or 3 for each spay day, looking at the FIV and FELV, and then with preventative and their reaction to cats as well.
So that's specific to the research projects, but were you asking aside from the research projects?
Yeah, I mean routine screening for any pathogens?
So
Commonly seen in cats.
outside of the research projects, no. All of the cats are receiving physical exams to make sure they're healthy enough to undergo surgery. They all receive deworming and flea prevention, but they're not being screened.
Okay, thank you. So while Dr. Peter, you have the microphone there, it's now your turn.
I actually had a little question too.
Sure.
Can I throw in?
Yeah.
So I guess as a disclaimer, I hang out with a lot of vet med people, but that's not my background. And as I learned about FCP, I've learned there's like nuances between strays and ferals. So how do you know when you can, like, because I was never sure why people don't adopt the cats and we release. And I think that has to do with the nuance between stray and feral. So I was just kind of curious.
So that is also another case-by-case instance. We've definitely had multiple cats come into our care where they're definitely adoptable. They're super friendly. They want to have someone. And in those specific instances, if they are feral, I still do check with either whoever's feeding them, or if someone is attached to them, I want to make sure that I'm not taking this cat away from them. Unless I get specific permission from the people feeding them, or they don't have anybody to advocate for them, then we have rehomed cats and they have gotten adopted. Or if a feral cat happens to give birth in the week that they're with us, their kittens do go into our foster program along with mom until they're weaned. And then of course the kittens get adopted, and mom is kind of a case-by-case instance on whether or not she's deemed adoptable or she's still feral and would prefer to go back outside.
Another comment, sorry, is that you know, we're not trying to mess with the populations too much, and our goal here is to manage the populations. Sometimes some of these cats may seem very friendly, and we may, in our own minds, think, oh yes, they want to be, you know, an inside cat. Then we try and bring them inside, and they are very unhappy because while they are nice, they very much enjoy their outside life, and so, you know, our goal for this club particularly is not to take these animals out of their current situation, but to make their current situation better and to maintain their population.
And really with all of the clubs that you were involved with, you know, have you seen over the years how the activities of the clubs have influenced how the community responds to animals now? And yes, any significant changes there?
Yes. So my many, many years of, greater than 10 years of doing this, and I've been actually the advisor for all these clubs also for greater than that span of time, actually. And so I have seen a significant shift and improvement in animal welfare and basically the human-animal bond and just responsible pet ownership here in St. Kitts. And I think that the clubs have made huge strides in making that difference, because the clubs, in addition to the school and actually curricular things that happen through the school that allow students to interact with community members and educate community members, the clubs do a significant amount of what we call service learning opportunities and service learning activities, which they all explain to you, is where we're going out in the community, interacting directly with community members to educate them, provide community outreach. And it's that education and over years and years of kind of helping owners to have the ability to have that easy access to care, helping owners to understand, like, what are these things that we're recommending, and why are we even recommending these things, and how and why are they is it helping their pets? And over time, those relationships between owners and pets has increased, they've become closer. Pets are being more considered as family members, and people really care about these animals. They seek the assistance, they want the assistance, and I think I can directly relate it to all of these different things and all these different ways that all of our students have become involved and immersed themselves in the community and really kind of made a difference. It's not just making a difference for the animals, it's the people, it's the community in general, as well as the ecosystem, improving public health, and then of course themselves. Students are getting the experience, and it's not just a clinical experience, but they're getting quite a bunch of clinical experience, but it's also just worldly and cultural experiences. So I think there's been a huge shift to the positive.
Yeah, wonderful. And a good note to finish on that section, but you're not off the hook yet. But again, a big thank you to Shelter Medicine, Vida, and the Feral Cat Project, and for sharing some of your thoughts with us. And without further ado, I'm just going to move on now to another group. So I'm excited to welcome Dr. Amy Bierschmidt, for those of you. Can we skip you? Oh yeah, Holly is still working. Yes, some of our students still have to work. Yeah. Okay. No, we can move on. Yeah, we will cover the St. Kitts Sea Turtle Monitoring Network Group. Are we all good with that? So I'm delighted to have here tonight Dr. Mandy Murty, who's a research veterinarian at Versio, a member of the board of the St. Kitts Sea Turtle Monitoring Network, and the lead on the water team, so she must be a good swimmer, I assume. Meredith Owen, who is here with her, is one of our students at Ross. Welcome, guys. Thank you very much. So let me just start by asking you to just give a summary again, because many people will not completely know what you do, when you do it, how you do it, where you do it, all of that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Meredith. Nice to meet you guys. So the St. Kitts Sea Turtle Monitoring Network, of course, we make a big point of surveillance of the turtles, as well as working with policymakers to offer data and science-based information to influence their decision in those policies. Do you have other things to add?
Sure. Yeah. It's what I wanted everybody to know about. Well, first, I'm a Ross alum as well, and I participated in Research Day and thought it was a huge benefit to my time here. And I was in most of these clubs and loved them all. I'd say our organization is a little bit different in that it's a community organization first, kind of Ross adjacent. So we get a different perspective because we're meeting the community with they come to us with their problems, and we're trying to work with them so that they can make their island better, because we're visitors here. So it's a very different perspective. We have a lot of community-based volunteers, a lot of community stakeholders. We're at all the different governmental meetings. For anything environmental, we're participating there just just to participate however we can with all of the data that we've compiled so that we know better the status of all of these different species we work with. And so the three main turtle species we do, hawksbill, green sea turtle, and leatherback sea turtle. Hawksbills are my favorite, critically endangered. So I really love educating as much as possible on everything about them because we're so lucky to have them here on the island. But we're working with a native species on St. Kitts. So I think it's a really, really neat experience for everybody to participate in learning more about the island and what we can do to help. And so it's not just our in-water team, where we have one of our big project is in-water census. So we're going out and looking at juvenile sea turtles, capture via snorkel in a humane way. Quickly, we take morphometrics measurements, we tag them, and get photos, and get blood samples and different swabs for viral pathogens and whatever we can do for surveillance. And then that's been going on for years and years and years, founded in, I want to say 2003. So it's been a wealth of information that we published recently in the veterinary journal for reptiles specifically. So it's been really, really valuable. We love it, but a lot of other components is huge amount of education, huge amount of hotline. We're going to talk about more about it, but I wanted to just say the hotline, I think, is probably our most valuable addition, and mostly because it's being used right now as not just for sea turtles, but basically a wildlife of any sort issue. People have that number and they call it. So we get calls about wild, any sort of shorebirds. We've gotten whale strandings, monkey injuries, really anything. They have a resource, and it's been used for that, but primarily for turtle sightings, turtle hatchlings, and things like that. And so we think it's really helps the community work towards protecting their own resource. And I know that they really value it. We work really closely with Department of Marine Resources, and I know that we're a big partner of ours. So, but I wanted to have shine on Meredith because she's one of our Rising Star students. So I'm just here to help out.
So while I'm waiting for questions from you, I'm going to ask a question of the Rising Star Meredith. Clearly it sounds great from a distance to work with these turtles, and I'm sure there's wonderful highlights, but can you give us some of the highlights you've had, where you have to pinch yourself with the experiences that you're getting?
Yeah, so for sure. So I will say it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes we do nest excavations and the hatch success rate isn't great, and that's a little demoralizing. And other times it's fantastic and that's exciting. Or we'll get a lot of calls about people who are witnessing a hatch, and we get to go out and make sure that those turtles are ready to go and that they're safe from predators as they make their fun little venture over to the ocean. What are some other fun ones I've gotten? I actually really enjoyed, we did some rehab on a pelican, and that was a really magical experience, just to get to do something a little bit different. Beach patrols, rehabilitation. I definitely love turtle releases, especially when they're the bigger turtles, or, we had some patients, Sassy and Caden, if any of you are familiar with those, and we got to put trackers on them, and, one went to Africa and the other one went back up to the States, and that was all really cool to watch.
Okay. They're like our students that travel everywhere. And tell me this, how do you feel we're doing with assessments? Because, we've heard about the drops in numbers across the Caribbean and stuff like that, but what kind of keeps you going around, that you're making an impact? Or do you get feedback from other organizations? Do you get feedback from other countries about?
Yeah, so definitely we partner with a lot of other regional, national, international government and private sector agencies. We all collaborate. Turtles are really a shared resource, so we all have to work together to share that information and better monitor the species population to ensure prolific survival in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say one more thing on it, just that new development for us is we we've been much more involved in WIDECAST this year, which is Wider Caribbean Sea Turtle Network, so including all of the countries in our Caribbean region. But Dr. Stewart, our fearless leader, who couldn't be here today, she's the new director of WIDECAST. So it's really centered on our island as at least for as long as she's director, going to be the focus. We're going to be the hub for sea turtle information. So every month we have these group kind of Zoom meetings where we're doing lectures on different topics, and each country will present different things in a collaborative effort and different subjects. So we had our first one recently, which was on in-water surveys, which I liked because that's where I focus a lot of the time. But it was really amazing to hear what other countries are seeing. And to touch on your question, it was basically in real time finding out where we're having discrepancies, because St. Martin and Martinique and all of them were talking about what they've seen as well, and that we've seen an anecdotal decrease in hawksbill recruits. So means that after they've hatched and left, we see these juveniles in the area, but we're not anecdotally yet, we're collecting the data, but not seeing new animals joining the group, so that they're leaving as adults but not coming back to this site and other sites in the Caribbean. And so we're looking at different ways to study why that is. Now, is it because our ecosystem is being hit? Is it the sponges that they're eating not doing well in our area? And so all of the regional turtle projects are basically in real time brainstorming as to what to do. And so it's a really great resource. And as a member, you can join any of these. And even as a non-member, we can get you the information. So if you're interested in hearing about turtles in the area, you can contact us and we'll get you hooked up.
I will toss in for people who aren't familiar, sea turtle reproductive age for most species is 20 to 30 years of age. So, we could be waiting a long time to get answers, and that's why that current population monitoring and surveillance and things is so important, because that's what allows us to document those trends and to respond better when we see disruptions.
And the other kind of two things I think that the club has been very good at is communicating research and to the public, and even alerting younger kids through the summer club or whatever.
Yeah, so we hold an annual sea turtle camp, and I have to say, seeing kids get excited for sea turtle camp is really magical. But it's been a great way to do some community outreach. Starting with the kids really opens a lasting dialogue in the community about turtles and their importance, and just things we can do to help them.
And the other area then that presumably must be a difficult one is, we all imagine research is lovely, nice and clean. It's, I'm going to have 15 turtles aged between 28 and 30, and they're going to all be available on Saturday between 9 and 5, and I can blood sample them and we can have a wonderful study. But this is clinical research and it never runs smoothly. So how, again, maybe Dr. Murty, how do you manage that, and how, what are the resources for doing all of that?
That's a great question. I think it's an issue that all of us in wildlife research have the same headache about, but it's what we sort of do to start approaching this is we have very rigorous SOPs and protocols for each situation that is going to present to us. So we know that no matter who's responding, everybody is collecting the exact same pieces of data, because we have people spread out all over the island and different volunteers, and we've instructed everybody, but that really helps, so that if you see a turtle, as long as you get those 10 pieces of information from each and every one, that it can really help our rigor, even in the off case where this one washed up and we didn't get a lot of information. As long as we can get sex and general measurements, then it can really add to our body of research. And the other thing I like to say is that it's a waiting game. It's a longevity for these studies. This recent publication was basically the entire data that we had since 2003, I think, or at least 2011. It's been a huge body of data that it took that long for us to feel confident enough in the rigor of that data that we wanted to share it with the world. And so it takes time, but it's a really valuable resource, and everyone in the Caribbean is sharing all of this with each other too. So I think that it's a patience. It's all about patience and optimism and looking towards the final goal of getting enough that you can really make a difference.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Meredith. Any final questions for the Sea Turtle Monitoring Network? We're all good?
I actually had a question. And I love that you said optimism, because that's a perfect segue, because I feel like when I look on the news, the talks of global warming, sustainability, or the coral reef are disappearing, it's a lot of doom, it's a lot of pessimism, and I don't know if in the experience and research that your group's working with, do we have things to be optimistic about? Do we see positive signs?
Oh, for sure, yeah. We've seen a lot of policy changes that have been really positive, and we're confident that those are going to continue to change for the best. As well as we've had a very good nesting season for hawksbills and greens. Do you have other?
Yeah, I think for sure the optimism in the policies, I like clinging to that because it's very satisfying. Again, waiting game for that, but when we hit those milestones, it's really, really gratifying that we're able to get a lot of protected area around our island for marine resources and tons of community buy-in, because it was only partially us. That's what they wanted. But I think that looking towards the younger generations is what keeps me going, for sure, because they get so excited about turtles, and they're running to their parents to tell them all about these turtles. They know more turtle facts than I do. They're so excited about it, and about beach cleanups and preserving the environment, and because it's a game to them, and they're just so excited about it. So I think that's where I cling to my optimism, because the numbers can take a long time to get that data. Like Meredith was saying, 20 to 30 years sometimes for you to see the result of all of that work. But with the younger generation really caring about all of this, that keeps our hopes alive, for sure.
Just to add to that, my son is 18 months old, and his fourth word he learned was turtle.
I do love turtles. I will go ahead and toss out that we've seen a really awesome further community engagement just on people reporting sightings or calling the hotline about events too, and that's been really awesome.
A question up there in the back. We also must remember the indirect value to the economy turtles have from the point of view of tourism. It's huge. It's in the Caribbean itself, so it's.
Hi. So I volunteered for the Sea Turtle Camp last semester, and it was amazing. I was wondering if there's something towards kids who are older, like middle school, high school, or students who are in community college. Is there something that, like a Sea Turtle Camp for them, to help them, guide them, and encourage them, yes, go after science?
So we've started producing little online certification courses for people who are members of the St. Kitts Sea Turtle Monitoring Network. Possibly someday that could be an expanded approach. Also, I am the coordinator of the newsletters. So, we've been working hard to continue to send out monthly and hopefully soon bi-monthly newsletters, just with different projects we're working on, research that gets published, things like that. As far as camps for the older local kids, I don't know, have we talked about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can say maybe not camps specifically, but we do have a good amount of high school students in their summer term coming to volunteer with our current student organizations. And I know it's hugely valuable for them, because a lot of them come summer after summer after summer and then end up, after they graduate, continuing to work with the organization. And so they're, I'd say, able to get even more involved once they get older, more hands-on now that they've kind of made it through the camp process. And we definitely have camp members who have, camp alumni who have come and helped run the camp themselves. So I know they love that too. But definitely lots of ways for the community to get involved. Lots of different students. We have them come just shadow sometimes. We do eco tours so they can come just experience it if they can't stay for a very long time. But lots of ways to get involved. So I'm also encouraged at how much community involvement we have. We have tons of calls, tons of people reaching out. Everybody's kids want to be involved, and everybody wants to learn how to protect their own beach in their own neighborhood. So it's great.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Murty and Meredith. Thank you so much. So we're going to move on, and we have a rigorous program here in Ross, and Holly will tell you all about it because she doesn't finish till 5:30. So, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, I don't have to tell you. But I want to welcome the next group, and we're going to now focus on Behavioral Science Foundation and Zoo Club. And here to represent them is Dr. Amy Bierschmidt, who, if you don't know her, you must be under a rock for the past few years. And also Dr. Krista Gallagher, who is Associate Professor of Veterinary Public Health and Epidemiology. And you will meet her in what semester? Fourth, but you'll see her before that. And also I want to welcome Holly, who's been able to join us, and Holly is going to introduce herself now and tell us why she had to be so late, and really, more importantly, to tell us her involvement in the club. Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, I'm Holly. Sorry I was late. I had taken up with the surgery team. I had surgery lab, so we had a cadaver lab. Yeah. So, yeah, I was the vice president of Zoo Club for 4 semesters. So I recently retired this semester. But Dr. Bierschmidt is our advisor, so she's been great through that all. Within the club, I had a big part with finding lectures that the students were interested in. We'd have a survey to see what they wanted to have presented, and do our best to try to find those types of lectures. On top of that, we also did wet labs. So some of the wet labs I would help coordinate were, we would actually do a terrestrial turtle lab. So we would do physical exams, which aren't as much, but more handling of turtles and tortoises. We would actually use the tortoises at Coconut Farm. They would let us use their red-footed tortoises to teach the students how to work with turtles, and honestly just reptiles in general, because a lot of the students don't get a lot of hands-on experience with them. And then another one is we do rabbit farm trips. So we would go to our local rabbit farmers who, the rabbits are for meat in St. Kitts, but it is a big part of the environment, or not, I'm sorry, the economy. And they do really love their rabbits, and they wanted us to come out and just do some physical exams and talk to them about husbandry to try to improve that for them until the rabbits had to go off. But so we would go do that. We didn't do any medical advice, but we did just taught them how to when they needed to get hair trims or nail trims or just general husbandry stuff like that. And then another big thing with Zoo Club is I would help with the international trips. So we would actually have students plan the international trips and then get to go abroad. So I've been to Belize and I've been to Thailand, and I got to do excellent externships with Zoo Club through that. But yeah, that's my main part.
And what is the relationship with Behavioral Science Foundation? What kind of work do you do with them?
With the behavioral science, we work with the primate center. So one of our other wet labs would be to go visit the primate center, and Dr. Bierschmidt would let us do volunteer work if we were interested.
So, I know about Zoo Club and I know about Behavioral Science Foundation. So, this is an excellent opportunity that you often can't get elsewhere. So, how have you dealt with when you go out and work in these particular places, how have you dealt with the groups that are there, and what's their perception of, trying to educate you and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so one of the big parts of our, I'll say for the rabbit trips specifically, is we do educate our members on how these rabbits are a part of the economy and how they are really important for the St. Kitts our economy, and to keep an open mind that sometimes maybe it's not the conditions as veterinarians we're completely used to, but to them, this is what they can do in their means, and it's really important to them. So we like to promote that in our club a lot. And we also have IACUC procedures, so we go by that, and we make sure the students follow that all the way through.
And for you, and maybe for some of your colleagues that have been in the club, what kind of things are highlights for you? What kind of things do you really look forward to? Or if you're joining the club now, what should you look forward to?
I'm still in the club. So the big thing is just finding new presenters. Like for example, we had a guy who did specifically giraffe anesthesia. So I thought that was really cool to offer something like that to our club members. And then we have we'll do zoo job opportunities. So they'll get to do some networking with some zoo vets, which it's not an easy field to get into. So I think it provides a good segue for our students to get into them.
And probably for Dr. Gallagher, but how do you impart to this kind of group and even to all of the students kind of the ethical considerations of, say, doing research with animals that are feral and then are in a controlled environment? And what kind of talking and discussions do you have around that?
Yeah, that's very important to think about all the ethics involved in research in general. And then, so I do mostly, I guess since I've started research here, I've been involved in multiple aspects of research involving the African green monkeys. And I started off doing more ecologically based projects. We did population estimates by using GPS tracking. So we started with that. I did a lot of pathogen work with my colleagues here, parasitology and virology work. And then I ended up doing more of the community perspective about our population of African green monkeys. So each one, I think the considerations are maybe slightly different when we're thinking about ethics, but I think the first thing that I always really asked and just thought about was, for each of these projects, should we be doing this? That's the first thing. This is a population that, yes, we have access to here. They're wild animals. They're free roaming. They're absolutely, for the most part, except for the crop raiding that is problematic, they're fine on their own. They're doing just fine. And so we kind of have to examine that. And I always thought, first and foremost, is there going to be a benefit to my research? Is there a palpable benefit? Are we going to do something and have a good benefit as the outcome? And that benefit could be, for some of my work, more of a societal benefit, but certainly also considering we hope that it is benefiting, the animals as well. So, and a lot of my research, both of those things were accomplished. So I think that's one of the biggest ethical things going into research that I think about. Secondly, of course, we have to think about the animal and kind of creating research that just minimizes harm as much as we can. And that harm can be physical harm. It could be, in the case of trapping a wild animal, sorry, there's a fly, psychological harm, caused by stress. So just really careful planning to do whatever we can to minimize those harms.
And for you, Amy, you're dealing with something that I would have had to deal with too a while ago, and that is, there's wild monkeys and there's monkeys that are captured or bred in captivity. And so one minute you're driving a car and you're seeing the wild free monkey, the next minute you're seeing the captive monkey. And in my day when I was working on feline immune deficiency virus, which at the time was a new virus, I had cats at home, but I also had cats in experimental colony. And you kind of, and you also see people, FCP, trapping, neutering, making cats better. So how do you deal with those dichotomies as a veterinarian, and how do you instill that to the future veterinarians that you work with on a daily basis? Sorry for the long question, but
no,
you know where I'm
fine.
going.
It's fine. I mean, I will say that, I work with them every day, and I have for over 20 years, and I still, when I see them, I'm like, oh, monkey. People are like, you see them every day. I'm like, yeah, but aren't they amazing? So yeah, I mean, it is, I think in this environment, it's interesting to me because the sort of range of perceptions of the African green monkey in St. Kitts is so much different than you would expect if you came in with a different set of eyes or a different culture. non-human primates in research in general are a very, very valuable, privileged species to work with, and yet we're in an environment where they are considered, a pest. It's some of the sort of community feelings that you would have in another culture don't really exist here, although they still exist in myself, and I still try to teach and educate people about the privilege, not only to work with an African green monkey, but to work with any of the animals that we get to work with. So I guess I take a win in the fact that we have a colony of monkeys that are all considered research animals. They're sort of under the guidance of accreditation bodies that monitor that we are doing best practice and ethical care. Not that we wouldn't anyways, but there are guidelines to follow, and regulatory agencies that monitor the care we have. And yet they're captive. And so there's always that question of, while I'm providing the best care, they get a cut, it gets stitched, they get antibiotics, they get a wound and, it's dealt with, they get sick and we care for them. They are research animals and they're there to serve a purpose. And in my mind, I feel comfortable that they are providing information on human health, hopefully on things that can be given back to animal species. So when we do research on animals, we always hope that while sometimes it goes forward, it usually then spins around and comes back to the animals themselves. Total hips were researched for humans, and now you can do total hips on your, golden retriever. So hopefully you hope they always come back to give them the same benefits. And so I hope that, they are giving valuable information towards human health, public health, cures. The African green monkey was used a lot in developing the COVID vaccine. And then in this culture, I realized that in the wild, while they're probably very happy for the most part to run around and raid people's gardens, and they don't have that standard of care that can be provided in the research center. So it is sort of a dichotomy. My monkeys aren't being chased around by farmers who are angry at them. And I think it's important for people to just always consider that research veterinarians really do love their animals and are trying to do the best for them.
And Holly, your experiences from all of this is an off-the-cuff question, your experiences from all of this with Zoo Club and being at the Science Foundation, does that instill you like a desire to kind of, work in the area of feral animals, as in wild animals, or in research animals, or has it turned you on or off either of those particular areas?
Yeah, so my goal is actually a kind of a niche goal. I want to do theriogenealogy, but with wild animals. So I want to work with endangered animals, like ones that are basically on the brink of extinction, and help to make sure that their reproduction is kind of on the up rather than going down. So working with the monkeys definitely has given me a better perspective of wanting to go into that research field. And I would work with research animals, but I think I want to do more of the wild and go like to Africa. And
yeah, recognizing us. Yeah. I think some of conservation ends up with them restricted anyway. So when you mentioned theriogenealogy, I just want to remind everyone, Dr. French should have been here tonight. She's not feeling very well. She could be listening in online, and she's just probably woken up now and she heard that someone is following theriogenealogy. So if you're online, get well soon, Hilary. Any questions, guys? I don't think the roving mic reporter is not doing very well. Yeah. Any questions from anybody? Okay, well, we come back around. Don't worry, I have plenty of banks of questions, but again, I want to thank you very much. Now, last but not by any means least, we have a discussion on the Donkey Club, and Caitlin is one of our students, and Dr. Cindy X is our faculty advisor. And I will pass it over to you, Caitlin, just to give us a brief summary of what crazy things you're up to.
So I'm Caitlin. I'm currently in 6th semester. I started in Donkey Club in 1st semester as a member and really fell in love with them very quickly. Didn't have a lot of large animal experience in general before coming to Ross, and I just loved the opportunity to interact with them and learn more about this area of medicine that I hadn't had a chance to explore yet. And in my 1st semester, I also briefly got to work with Dr. Segabanazzi when he was doing some of his Theria research. And then at the end of my 1st semester, I saw the club post an announcement that they had an officer opening. So I jumped right on that and was an officer from my 2nd to 4th semester. And one of the things that I've loved so much being an officer was just seeing how much the club grew. When I first became an officer, the club had only been around for 1 year. And as an officer, I was able to look back through some of the club's records. And the first semester that the club collected dues, there was 70 due-paying members. And within 1 year, so by the time I took over the role, we had doubled the number of members in the club, so up to 150 members in a year. And I think that really speaks to how much work went into starting the club and how much students were eager to interact with these animals that play such a vital role in our education here at Ross and such an important role on the island as well. And since then, we've gotten to involve students even more. There was a position opened up outside of the executive board within the Donkey Club that invited members to volunteer for the role of handler. So even as they weren't part of the executive board, they could help run sessions and so still take on a role of leadership within the club. And we opened it up to anybody that was interested. It wasn't based on experience, it was based on willingness to learn and willingness to help teach our peers. And people have really taken to that role very vigorously. Each semester we've had a great group of handlers, and we could not function as the club we are now without their help in running the sessions.
So what has been kind of the transformational changes you'd have seen within these animals because of this kind of interactions with them and human?
So one of the first things you see when you come to a Donkey Club session, and I always tell our members, I say, we have some very willing volunteers. And so you go up to the gate and there's a decent number of whichever herd we're working with at that time, because we normally work semester to semester either with the Jennies or the Johns, whichever ones aren't being used by the 7th semesters in their large animal rotations. And you go up to the gate and you have a decent number of them come right up. And so I tell our members, we get a lot of especially eager 1st and 2nd semesters. So I say, like, if this is your first handling session, feel free to pick one of our very willing volunteers. And then for our more experienced members, those who have been to a few sessions, we say you can challenge yourself if you want to grab someone that's maybe still over by the feed pen, because we still want to build that relationship with those donkeys, but we also want to make sure the students are comfortable with what they're doing. So letting it be kind of a symbiotic relationship, like the donkeys that want to be worked with, there's people that can work with them. And then the donkeys that maybe don't volunteer, but we still want to make sure that they're getting that positive reinforcement. And you can really see it within the sessions themselves. So we have a lot of young lower semesters come in, and even within a session, so we'll see them working with the donkeys. And one of our biggest things is just general handling. And so we put the halter on and the lead rope, and we'll do our grooming and our husbandry in the beginning, and then sometimes we'll have them take a lap around. We have like a little track, we take them around. And because some of our donkeys, they'll go right with you, and some of them maybe don't want to walk, but it's good practice for everybody. We all get our steps in. And one of the things that we teach in Donkey Club is really positive reinforcement. We have Cheerios. I'm sure they wish they were Honey Nut or Apple Jacks, but they are just Cheerios. And so we use the Cheerios as a positive reward, but then also teaching students like even just constant pressure on the lead rope. And then as soon as the donkey steps forward, we try to emphasize like as soon as they step forward, you release that pressure, you give them their positive reward, and they learn very quickly. And the students are really impressed with how quickly the donkeys learn when they're rewarded appropriately. And so I had a student in a session last semester that they got to do this. They had a donkey that didn't really want to move with them. And so I instructed her on some tips on how we could try and encourage them to walk. And she did it a few times. I think she did it like 2 or 3 times. And she was like, oh my gosh, now he's going. Like he's ready to run a race. No, not quite that far. But I think the students really appreciate getting to see how that positive reinforcement can help. And then from another perspective, we do get feedback from our current semester, 7th semester students, and we try to implement those things within the club themselves. So one of the things while I was an officer that we did was Dr. X had heard reports that a lot of the donkeys were tentative about stepping on a scale. So while we do have a scale, one of the things we started with was we went out and bought some yoga mats. And so just practicing with the donkeys stepping from one surface onto another and rewarding them in that way. We also heard about that they were getting sensitive with their necks because of blood draws and catheterization, so we're working on that with them. And Dr. X has heard from other faculty members that there's been less injuries within 7th semester and less incidents in general since the Donkey Club has been working with them, so that when they're interacting with students, it's not always something that they might perceive as a negative experience. They get to learn that a student working with them is a positive experience as well.
Does your club as well does outreach to the community? Is that right? Or are you about to do some outreach to the community? Well, I introduced Dr. Cindy X. For many of you who do know her, you know her, but for those of you who don't, she's the assistant professor of equine medicine, and you will meet her in the later semesters.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background of the Donkey Club's humble beginnings and then speak on some of the service and the outreach that we're planning on doing. So one of the things that I really wanted to do as part of my career always was just to further the field of donkey medicine, but I think that when it comes to how we handle donkeys and their cultural perception, a lot of it tends to be on the negative side. And I really wanted to make sure that my career was based on evidence-based medicine. And so of the existing research out there on donkeys and their behavior, I wanted to be able to implement that in the club and start with something that was relatively simple, but nonetheless still required a lot of kind of consistent effort in order to make fruitful. And so essentially that is teaching people about the evolutionary biology of donkeys, how where they have evolved shapes their current behavior. And so a lot of that is about educating our student handlers in the Donkey Club so that they can then educate further students and further future clinicians. And a lot of what we're doing currently is making sure that our donkeys are quite desensitized to some of the things that they might experience as teaching animals. And in that aspect, they have improved welfare, especially considering how important they are to the student curriculum. At the same time, in talking about the evolutionary biology of donkeys and how that shapes their behavior, I'm also able to really educate our student handlers on what operant conditioning looks like in a clinical setting, because a lot of times we talk about operant conditioning, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment, but how do we actually implement that? And so in having these donkey handling sessions for the students to actually be able to implement those theoretical considerations to a clinical animal, I can see that they're able to pick on that in a much faster manner because they actually have an animal where they can see the progression of that animal's behavior change from perhaps an reluctant, unwilling animal to do a task for them to an animal that is very willing and very eager to learn and work. And so speaking about outreach, I think that currently, because the club is relatively new, it's kind of a baby club. I've only been here for 3 years, so you can kind of understand how young the club is. Our community outreach, if you will, is more centered on the Ross community. But I just got exciting news today that we're going to be able to start a program where we have neurodivergent condition students come to one of our donkey handling sessions, and in that way we can also start educating the wider community off Ross campus about donkeys and hopefully start to shift that perspective of donkeys as maybe a negative beast of burden, a pest, into an animal that is still highly relevant to the culture here today. So.
Yeah, wonderful. That's great news, actually. Yeah. Be really, really exciting. And I don't know if many of you were able to attend it, but we had a discussion on the donkey dilemma the other night, which is really, is it a pest? Is it a pet? Or is it a... I'm just testing you. A provider. And I learned at one of the 3-minute theses a few things actually about donkeys that I didn't know before. And the main one was that they supply milk professionally as opposed to just for their little babies. And I think that was something I hadn't realized. My grandfather owned a donkey. We had a farm where the donkey was the main tractor of its day. And so it's a pretty common animal to have. Just broadly speaking, and we will need to bring this to a close, but and maybe someone will have comments on it. But so the involvement in all of these clubs by all of you, it's clearly there for animal welfare. I mean, that is all your focus. But there's also an element of human welfare. Your own welfare, and it was touched upon earlier about how the trials and tribulations of working with animals and the ethical conflicts that was already mentioned. And I think that's probably what we're trying to create today, is kind of talking about all of these factors that come into play. There's a positive environmental effect or potentially a negative one. And I think one example of where what looked like it was going to be a negative one that got turned into a positive one was a number of years ago, Kimberly talking about her work with the fishermen, when, could fishermen survive when they weren't trapping turtles and using them for food, and she did a complete turnaround on all of that, and some of those guys actually became supports in the eco-tourism that was going on pre-COVID, and no doubt it'll be back again. So, there's many of those particular factors that's into play. The monkey, very much like the donkey, is the monkey great for tourism because it is, but some of the ways it's used in tourism, not so good. And then the whole idea of the pests and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if anyone has any comments on any of that, but I think that's kind of where we're going with this whole kind of night of understanding. Krista looks wise. She'll probably say something about all this.
You made some amazing points here. What can I follow up with? I don't know. I guess, gosh, where do I want to start? I think what I've learned from my research, like a big thing that I consider is just there's a balance. We may be talking about one species, it's a donkey, it's a monkey, but it really is, it's a very complex issue, and it's greatly dependent on community perceptions and attitudes surrounding this animal. And I'm talking about the monkey, but in here in St. Kitts, the monkey, to be used as an example, is a very dichotomous situation, like you said, because it's a pest for farmers, and for those of you who might not grasp, we can say that pretty easily, but I've sat around a table with farmers who, imagine putting your utmost, you're tilling the soil, you're planting, and you don't make a whole lot of money to begin with. And then just as you have this harvest, and things are looking good, a troop of monkeys comes in and decimates the crop that you were going to pay for things. So we have that view, and that's we have to figure something out to help that needs to be improved. At the same time, we have an animal that is highly used and touted around as this iconic, charismatic animal, for tourism. So I guess that's maybe what I'd love us all to think about, is just how one animal can represent different things to different people. And for us to, I think, for us as a university and a resource for this island, I just see such amazing work that we're reaching out to people, finding out their perspectives, seeing what we can do to improve situations. So I'll end there.
Thank you. Well, better said than I could say it. But with that, I do want to bring this to a close. I want to thank all of our speakers tonight, and you can see them now, you recognize them, so you can join the clubs or pick up good tips as to what to do. And I want to thank our faculty advisors, and also Dr. Murty, Dr. Peta, Dr. Gallagher, Dr. Beersmith, Dr. Cindy X, and for your valuable work in this particular area, and obviously all of you officers who are very busy in your day jobs to also be busy in this. And the sense of giving back, I'm sure, is good, but that comes with its own toll, and make sure you continue to look after yourselves. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Big round of applause.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That was very educational. Before everyone runs off, we are going to announce the winners of the poster and infographic competitions. So our first poster runner-up was Elsie Washburn with Determining Deliberate Practice Time Needed to Perform Direct and Indirect Fundoscopy on Canine Simulation Models. Come on down. Switching slides. Okay, you go on up. I don't want to be Congratulations. Okay. And then our poster winner is, this was her poster. Our poster winner is Liam Kitson for Unraveling the Blood Microbiome in Healthy and Febrile Domestic Cats. Okay, I don't think he was able to make it. It's okay. Liam's very busy. All right, so our poster People's Choice Award was Carla Joseph with Platelet-Rich Plasma Mitigates Endometria Inflammation of Jennies Inseminated with Cryopreserved Semen Preliminary Data. Calm down. Great job, thank you. And then our last award for the evening is for the infographic winner, which is Katia Delgado Lopez for Stop the Spread of Vector-Borne Illnesses. Okay, she's online. All right, well, congratulations and thank you very much. All right, and that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's session. I will let you close it off.
Okay. No, I have it now. Okay, it takes a while to come on. So again, thanks everybody for this session and really for a week of wonderful activities thus far. I don't know if there's something on tomorrow. No, we're good. Okay. There's the One Health Club tomorrow. One Cancer, One Care. What time, where? 12 o'clock somewhere on campus. You'll have it in your lower odd, okay. One Health Club tomorrow, 12 o'clock. I want to thank everybody, Samson, Dr. McCarthy, our Associate Dean of Research, who's been spearheading this. Also Ruth and the team who've been putting it all together. And many of the people who've been working on this, like the interviewees for Dr. Grandin, and for everything. Thank you so much. Is there a reception afterwards or something?
Food outside, food and drinks, so join us. And thanks to our fantastic IT team for making this all happen and broadcasting live.
Thank you to the IT team who've also divided the walls and everything. Thank you, Brittany. And thank you, Catherine, our Master of Ceremonies.
If you're in first semester, there is a QR for attendance.